What up, everybody? How you going? How you going, mate? Harrison here, the Arabian Pleb podcast, I guess. Guess I'm going to call it that. Hope everyone's doing well on this Easter weekend. It is, I'm going to start saying the date now. It is Saturday, the 19th of April, 2025, and it is 1:13 p.m. I just put out a episode. I released it today. Sorry, I recorded it yesterday, so I probably won't put this one out today. I'll probably put it out tomorrow. So by the time you're hearing this, it'll be Sunday, Easter Sunday. But I just wanted to jump on here. I usually like to try and do these when I'm home alone before my fiance gets home from work, just so that I'm not pissing her off with my ramblings any more than she has to listen to my ramblings, because I do like to ramble. But just wanted to I wanted to talk a little bit about some domestic things here in Australia. So, and particularly, I just found on the ABC website they're interviewing a bunch of people talking about the housing market and the current crisis in housing and how unaffordable it is for young people, which I can totally attest to and appreciate. I understand it and I get it. I am very, very lucky, very fortunate to be in the property market, and it only is because of my fiance, really, that's possible. Um, and if it wasn't for her, largely, I mean, I do contribute with my income and everything, but just in terms of like having a deposit and being able to, just that being made possible through, largely a lot of her money that she inherited, it wouldn't be possible. So I get it. It is rough going out there. It's terrible. And a lot of it, not all of it, but I'd say the vast majority of the problem is because of government policies, their policies with interest rates, with money printing, with debt, and also with development, restricting development with through zoning laws and just things of that nature. So all of this is just a massive mess caused by our government. So I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about that and play this video here on the ABC of people, and venting their frustration. And let's just let's go through it, and I'll just give my thoughts. So let's have a listen.
Like, I was literally just reading something this morning thinking about young people entering the market and how hard it is, and I was just thinking, it just seems like such an unrealistic goal to own a house. Even like moving somewhere from Sydney that seems more affordable, it still seems sort of unachievable.
If I have friends that work locally and both have full-time jobs and young kids and they can't even get into the market, they've been saving for years and it just doesn't seem possible for them anymore. So I've noticed a lot of people are opting for other choices like caravanning and tiny houses, living with family to try and make their way basically.
The market's too competitive for renting and buying actually.
Yeah, that is a sad truth as well, as that because of inflation and these government policies, it's not only drove up the principle of the house, like the price of buying a house, but also then that works in with like how expensive rent gets because of the fact that people can't buy. They're totally unable to get into the market and purchase something, so they're forced to rent. So that drives up more demand on the renting side and makes rent way more expensive as well than it otherwise would be absent these government policies. So it's just all around fucking terrible, man. Like it's awful. It's god awful, and it's gotten so much worse in the last few years. Really, since COVID, it's gotten just terrible. Like double and sometimes even more so the price of renting and buying. And it, of course, it's no surprise, because what was the response to COVID? It was lock everything down, just completely everybody stop working and just completely destroy any sort of production and value adding to the economy, and we'll just print a bunch of money and pay people to stay home. And then we're all, a lot of people are wondering, God, why is things so expensive? Why has my grocery bill tripled? Why has the price of housing doubled? Why has my rent, in many cases, more than doubled? Well, it's because of that simple fact that you pay people to stay home, and you create more currency units and inject that into the economy. They're going to go chasing the things that, that just the existing supply. So, yeah, terrible.
How can people afford to save for a house when nearly half their wage goes to renting?
So most things get started with appreciating what the problem is or how big the problem is. So an accurate assessment. It's all well and good to do your stats through your ATOs and the like, but I don't know that there's a genuine reflection of the need and desperation of some people.
Build more houses, put people back to work, off the dole, and make them build houses. Community service, do something, put back to the community.
Surprisingly, even at my
That guy's, he's halfway there, in my opinion. He's, he's at least getting at half the problem, which is the need to build more houses. There is such a lack of supply, and largely because of, like I mentioned before, these zoning laws and these local councils, that it just makes it damn near impossible to be able to build something and increase the supply. Like, I know just from my experience, so when my fiance and I were first looking at buying something, the house that I'm living in right now, which is an old farmhouse, we went to the owner and we offered to buy this house, and because it's zoned as rural, and I guess because it's farming, so it's zoned as rural or something to that effect. Basically, it's not zoned as residential, put it that way. So he looked into getting just this one small part of this property rezoned, and went to the council and asked him if he could just, subdivide off, a quarter of an acre, or, 700, 800 square meters, just for us to have the yard. There already is a fence here, just fencing in, probably roughly, I'd say maybe 700 square meters. So he went to the council to ask if he could just subdivide that small little 700 square meters with the house on it and sell it to us. And the council said, no, not allowed. How fucked up's that? It's fucked up. He owns this property, but he's restricted in what he gets to do with the property. So at the end of the day, he's actually not the ultimate decision maker, and the council, these local councils, have the final say. And they chose to say no. So that's just one small example of where the council fucks over landowners who are trying to at least solve half the problem, which is the supply factor. But honestly, that's not really getting to the heart of it. If you want to get to the heart of the problem is monetary policy. It's the fact that interest rates have been so suppressed for so long, and that's what's drove up the principle. That's what's driven up the price of the property itself. It's these artificially suppressed interest rates. Because you think about it, if you're going to, so put it this way, all an interest rate is the price of money. It's the cost to borrow money. And if you're going to artificially make that cost a lot lower than it otherwise would be, then you're going to encourage more people to borrow. So there's inflation created through debt in the private sector, through commercial banks, which brings down the value of the dollar. And so that means that it requires more of these devalued dollars to buy the existing stock of houses. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So yeah, if you're going to make the cost of money a lot cheaper, then that means it's going to take more of that money to buy the same things that exist. And if you're not going to increase the supply on the other side of the equation, if you're not going to increase the supply of the housing and bring down the value of that, then then it's just going to be so much more expensive to buy it with artificially cheaper and cheaper and cheaper money. Hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's the heart of the problem is monetary policy and the fact that they are diluting the value of the dollar.
My age and owning a home, I actually am worried because of the prices going up so much that if you want to relocate maybe or do something else, it's still very, very hard.
Exactly. Like he makes a good point there too. It's like it's so short-sighted, this policy of, on paper increasing people's wealth through housing. So people now, like anyone who owns property who say they might have purchased their house 10, 15 years ago for $300,000, $400,000 or $200,000, whatever it was, and then now that same property that they purchased for $200,000 is now worth $1 million. The short-sightedness is like, oh great, I'm a millionaire now. How good's that? But obviously, $1 million in 2025 is nowhere near as valuable as $1 million in 2005. So and if you're going to sell your $1 million property with the intent to like buy something else, without drastically downsizing, and even if you did, I'm sure that you're still not going to have much left over. But yeah, it's like it's you're actually not that much richer. Like even though you're now a millionaire, like I said, like what's $1 million today? It's like it's nothing compared to what it used to be. So yeah, that gentleman there had a great point.
Housing addresses that have come through, it's not enough. It's not fast enough. They're promising changes by 2029, by which stage the current government won't be in, or if it has, it'll be changed. So they're making promises for the future, but we've got nothing for now.
The pressure on the rent on people, plus the pressure on the marketing outside for shopping, especially groceries, it's really put a big effect on our business. We're not getting enough people to dine in or spend a little bit of money.
A party that could come up with a policy that sounds workable and achievable would get my vote, definitely.
There you go. And I agree with that gentleman there at the end. That's right. If there was a party that would actually come up with a policy that's going to address the fundamental issue of this housing crisis in this country, I'd vote for him too. But none of them are. None of them are proposing anything that's actually going to address the issue. All they're doing is it's a competition of who's going to promise the most free shit, and it's bullshit because when you hear any of these politicians, the Prime Minister or the opposition or anyone else go on about, we want to provide you free healthcare, we want to provide you free education, we want to provide you free this, that, and the other, none of it's free, because where does the government get its money from? They have to first tax you. They have to first take the money by force from productive people. That's how it works. So none of it's free. It's incredible. I heard Dave Smith saying this the other day, but it's incredible the uphill battle that anyone who actually is speaking the truth has when they're trying to dismantle the propaganda, because the propaganda has such an advantage when it comes to how they sell the propaganda, because they can just lie and just say, oh, this is free. We're going to provide all this stuff for free. And then it takes like guys like Dave Smith and myself having an attempt at it, but anyone who's actually speaking the truth to be like, no, it's not fucking free, and here's why, and then have to go into what the truth doesn't just fit on a bumper sticker like a lie can. So yeah, it's very, very frustrating, but It's the truth. Nothing is free. Nothing that the government provides is free. And at the very least, even if what they're providing is like, I don't know, like maybe if you can make an argument that like, oh, but it is beneficial that the government does it, you have to at least acknowledge that, yeah, but still, in order for the government to do it, it's going to be far more expensive than for, just private citizens or a charity or something like that to do it, because the money has to be filtered through these bureaucrats. They're going to take their cut off the top and pay all their salaries and on all those government employees, and then after that, then you may see, something on the other side of it. But they take their money along the way. So at the very least, even to be the most charitable and steel man, a government, providing some service or whatever, it's always going to be much more expensive just because of that simple fact. How does someone in the market, like provide a service or a good? They have to be providing some sort of value. So even for like an entrepreneur or or a business owner or whatever, when they're providing something, you could say I can hear in my head like someone arguing, going, "Oh no, but they're got to take their cut as well. Like they've got to pay themselves in order to provide you a good or a service." But the thing that you're missing is that it's voluntary, so it's not done by force. And also, in order for you to voluntarily hand over your money to a business owner or an entrepreneur, you have to at least perceive that there's value there. So like they've got to provide something in such a way that you think that the cost is worth it. For, if they're selling you a hat for $5 and I have $5 and I think, oh, I really want that hat, I value that hat more than this $5, then like I've benefited because I got the hat and I value that hat more than the $5, and they've benefited because they obviously valued the $5 more than the hat, even though maybe it only cost them just whatever, it's just stupid hypothetical, but maybe it only cost them $2 to produce the hat. So and then their time and labor was like $1 worth, so it's $3 in cost, and then the $2 is profit to them. So they've won, but I've won as well because I got a fucking hat that I really wanted, that I valued more than $5. I hope that makes sense. And I'm sure as time goes on, I'll get better at explaining all this sort of stuff. But that's my point, is that like when it's voluntary, then that means that you made that choice, and voluntary exchange only happens in markets. When it comes to government, it's all force, because you don't voluntarily choose to pay taxes. And if you can sit there and say, oh, but I would voluntarily choose to pay taxes because I think that X, Y, and Z reasons it's good to pay taxes, then okay, then let's make taxation voluntary then. And let's see how many people really do want to pay their taxes voluntary. Wouldn't that be interesting? If it's such a good idea, then why do they need to force it? Why does it need to be at the threat of violence and at the threat of a gun and at the threat of, I'm going to lock you in a fucking cage if you don't pay these things, if it's such a beneficial thing to society? Why does that need to be the case? Let's make all taxation voluntary, but then obviously at that point, it would no longer be taxation. There we go. There's a nice little rant from me. So I'm going to see what else we got. What else have we got? Oh, what I did want to do is I want to show you a chart of interest rates. So this is the Australian 10-year yield, so a 10-year government bond, but it's virtually identical. Not much difference to the short end of the scale. So like the short-term interest rates, which is I'm sure what the RBA charts would be. Although actually I might even try and look those up, but let me just show you just as an example. Like, so we can all agree that the price of housing has just exponentially got more and more expensive over the years and decades. Like if I think back to like my mum purchased her house in 1996 or 7 for $73,000. That same house would now be worth almost $1 million. And not much has fucking changed. She put a new roof on it and she knocked out a couple of internal walls. But other than that, and she put a veranda on it. Okay, so she put a veranda on it, right? But like, so even if she didn't do any of those things, even if she didn't do an extension and build a new veranda, and even if she didn't, replace the roof, that house would still be worth, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars more than $73,000. Like even a dog box piece of shit house in this area where I live in northern New South Wales would be $500,000 minimum. I mean, even like today in 2025, even houses, because where I live is quite low lying, and when there's a lot of rain, it does flood, and there's a lot of houses that are in what we would consider, flood zones. Even some of these houses that are in flood zones that have gone through at least 2 floods in 2017 and in 2022 was a big one. Even those and had literally had flood water gushing through the whole goddamn house. Even those houses today are selling for $650,000. So just to give you an idea, like that, just the value of property has just gone through the roof, even for absolute shit boxes. Compared to when my mum purchased her house for $73,000 in 1997 or 6, can't remember. But so let me just show you. So this is a chart of interest rates in Australia. And as you can clearly see, like what do we see here, guys? What are we looking at? We are looking at, a trend downwards. Let me change that color. But just to white. So, it's very clear. Like, so since 1980, and that's, when interest rates really jacked up in response to all the inflation of the 1970s, and the inflation of the 1970s was when we went off the gold standard. When, globally we went off the gold standard. America went off the gold standard, and then de facto everyone else went off the gold standard because of the Bretton Woods system. And if you don't know about the Bretton Woods system, look it up. Look up Bretton Woods. Maybe like Bretton Woods monetary policy, something like that, and it'll give you the explanation. But so, so since 1980, it has just been a steady and even a dramatic decline, all the way down to at the lows of which was COVID. Was it COVID? Yeah, COVID, March 2020. This is for a 10-year bond, the 10-year yield. So this is if you were to loan your money to the government for 10 years, locking your money up and locking it away for 10 years, the interest rate you could expect for 10 years, I cannot stress that enough, is 0.77%. So on the short end, it was zero. No, it was 0.1. Sorry, the RBA pushed the short end of rates down to 0.1 interest rates. And and then in the last couple of years, because the inflation has been so bad and the government just can't hide it anymore, even with their as Mike Maloney would call it, the CP lie, their CPI consumer price index, just bullshit, which is a fucking lie. They only measure certain amount of goods. Even using those metrics, they couldn't hide how much inflation and how high prices were going over the last couple of years. So they've been dragged kicking and screaming, forced to bring interest rates up, even just modestly. But yeah, look at the overall trend. And is it any wonder that house prices have gone through the roof? Because it's something else that's worth keeping in mind is property, like real estate, is very sensitive to interest rates because the vast majority of people have to borrow money in order to buy it. So that's why. But maybe if I go over to, let's go to the US 10-year yield, and we'll probably get a bit more data. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so look, so again, in the interest rates really peaked out in the 80s, early 80s, 81-ish. And then ever since then, it's just been a steady decline all the way down. And on the US 10-year yield, I think, yeah, you could get a bit more. Actually, let me just zoom in. 0.3 at the very lows during COVID, 0.3% for 10 years. Let me just have a suss at the RBA website and see if I can actually see the short end, end of the interest rates. Just let me have a look. So here's the Reserve Bank of Australia cash rate. That's what they call the short-term interest rate. So here's the cash rate here. So a pity the data doesn't go back any further, but it only goes back to 1990. But if it did go back further to the 80s, the interest rate would be up here somewhere, I'm sure. It was much like those other charts that I just showed you. But so since just on this chart here, like going back just to the 90s, steady decline, steady decline, steady decline. I believe this was the recession that Australia had to have in the 1990s, and so they brought interest rates up slightly, but obviously here, it's just a lower high, and then they cut rates again, and then the early 2000s. This is probably, I think this is like 9/11. They brought interest rates up ever so slightly, and then cut them again, and then they slowly brought interest rates up just slightly, and then we've got the leading up to the 2008 financial crisis, and then we have the crisis, and then they cut rates, they cut them back down to even lower, and then so from 2000, roughly like 2012 to COVID, it was just a steady decline. Look at that, just rates just steadily cutting. Well, I wonder what the excuse was, because like the Keynesian like philosophy, for those that don't know, John Maynard Keynes, he came up with essentially like Keynesian economics, which is what the whole world is basically run on. This is the economic philosophy. So his philosophy was like it's all about staving off deflation, and like what you do in times of crisis, and what the monetary policy should be if there's ever a deflationary period. So if there's ever like a big market crash or something, his prescription was to cut interest rates to stimulate the economy. So you make borrowing money much cheaper, so that more people will go out and be incentivized to borrow money, and then there'll be more like GDP will be spurred on, and there'll be more people going out and buying things, and just all that, and then that will get us out of the deflationary period, and we'll recover, so to speak. So that's what they always do. That's what these politicians and these central bankers always do, is that anytime that there's even a slight sense or indication that the stock market's going to crash, or the housing market's going to crash, God forbid, the first thing they do is come into the rescue, supposedly, and do whatever they can to prevent the housing market crashing and the stock market crashing. Isn't that criminal? Isn't that and look at everyone just suffering, like just your average, mum and dad and family-owned business, and just young people, all these, the next generation, my generation, the millennials, and then Gen Zers, and generations after that. Everyone is suffering because of this Keynesian economic model of stimulating the economy anytime it tries to correct, because that's actually what's going on, is that anytime that prices try to come back down to reality, they come in and do this bullshit and just start cutting rates and doing whatever they can to create more inflation. So and then there was so much inflation after the 2020 COVID lockdown period, Scamville, that they've been forced, reluctantly literally dragged kicking and screaming in many cases, to bring up interest rates. And then they've made a cut recently, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're just going to go straight back down to zero again in the not too distant future. We'll see. I don't like making predictions. Nicky boy, my Nick brother. Hope you're well, dude. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. Rightio. So I might end it there. This has been a lot of fun. I quite enjoy doing these recordings. I'm going to keep doing them. I got this new mic, and so I'm going to take advantage of it. Can't help myself, guys. Hopefully there's people out there that enjoy this, and for anyone who doesn't, as my friend Dale would say, fuck the lot of yous. I'm doing it anyway. Now, it's good fun. All right, so yeah, just talking about the housing market in Australia, Australian monetary policy, and monetary policy globally, really. A lot of this comes from the Americans, so whatever the US government is doing, Australia definitely follows suit. We're America's little bitch, essentially. And oh God, I'll have to do another episode talking about. Sorry, I had a little burp. I'll do another episode talking about Australia's China policy and Taiwan and all that stuff, because from what I can see, it's looking like we're going to be the pawn in this game with America's posture towards China and defending Taiwan, which is just fucking ludicrous. Like, I feel for the Taiwanese, and I wish for everyone's freedom and independence, but at the end of the day, there's no way in hell I'm going to go fight and die to defend Taiwan. Like, fuck that. And my little brother ain't going to go fight and die for Taiwan, and I don't expect anybody to. Like, it'd be different if this country, Australia, was being invaded directly, then there'd be a better case for going to fight and die to protect this country and our homes and our families. But for a foreign country, no, fuck that. So, but America's really pushing for it, sadly. And the Trump administration is seemingly very hawkish towards China. So that's pretty fucking scary. So I might have to do a little something on that and get talking about that and get people out of their retarded, spastic hawkishness towards China. There's no need for it. It's just fucking stupid. So that'll be an episode for another day. All right. Love you all. Happy Easter. Hope everybody had a good Easter, a good Friday. And I hope everyone has a really good Easter Sunday and spends lots of time with their family. Rightio. Peace out. Catches.